Hey, Lord Devereaux, I figured I'd find you here.
Ah, hello, Bradley. Yes, the others asked for sustenance, so naturally I had to also go grocery shopping, as you humans say.
And you thought the library would be the best place to do that? I suppose it makes sense given that you eat stories, but I don't think the others have an appetite for books in the same way you do.
They will survive until I can acquire organic sustenance for their mortal coils. First, I must finish browsing. I am looking for vintage titles to satisfy my palate.
Okay, that explains why we're in the historical fiction section.
Ah, yes. Nothing quite like the smell of alternate history with notes of fantasy and science fiction.
Is that your stomach making that noise?
It is not. I have been snacking while I browse.
Alright, whoever's hiding back there, you can come out now.
Oh man, they spotted us. Stinky little hobbitses.
Let me guess, you're both hungry?
I'm hungry too. I can't find any protein here. Only books about protein.
That's because it's a library, Arnold. Bradley, question, have you decided who won the Devine Challenge yet? No, Fenton, that's next week. Taking your sweet time, aren't you? Ugh, I hate you and your hangry, Fenton.
Bradley, have you seen this book? The premise is fantastic. The scent is alluring. I can only begin to imagine the rich flavors it contains.
Oh, hey, that's The Gathering by Gabriel Garcia. He's the guest on this week's episode.
Really? Well, then I think it's time we start recording the Saved as Draft podcast.
I couldn't agree more, my friend. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 56 of the Saved as Draft podcast. We're coming up on the halfway point for Flash Fiction February, and we're also very close to breaking last challenge's record. The first indulgence, of course, had nearly 400 entries, and Flash Fiction February this year is set to surpass that quite soon. On today's episode of the show, we'll start with our community spotlight before diving into the top 5 stories submitted for week 2 of the ongoing challenge in each of the 3 brackets. That's 15 shoutouts total, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at some of the new names on the leaderboards. This Sunday, I will publish a post that shows the current leaderboard standing for the top 5 authors in each bracket as well. This will give you your first look at who is on track to win the challenge in each bracket as of mid-month. I also want to take a moment to promote my new poetry collection that released this week. Beauty in the Ending, Eulogies for Dying Worlds is a collection that tells the story of 15 different planets from the perspective of a cosmic being who visits them as they draw their final breath. It's a story about grief, perseverance, and what it means to leave your mark on the universe. And it's just $5. Find a link to get your digital copy in the show notes, and stay tuned for a physical release in the future. For this week's featured guest interview, I'll be sitting down with Gabriel Garcia. Gabriel is an accomplished author, podcaster, and a fellow author over at Audio Mazes, so I'm really excited to have him on the show this week. He's not on Substack currently, so I'll share a bit about him ahead of the interview later in the episode. And now, for this week's Community Spotlight. This week, I'd like to shout out Possum Kingdom here on Substack. This writer is an incredible poet who I met last year when I experienced their I Was a Man Once series, and they just published the conclusion of part 1 the other day, so I figured now is the perfect time to spotlight them on the show. They have a publication where they do satirical articles like The Onion, but if you hop on over to their other publication, FR though, you'll find the I Was a Man Once series. These are short poems with a beautiful framing narrative about a character known as the Recaller who's being questioned by a mysterious group. Each poem dives deep into an aspect of the human experience, and there's original art paired with each one as well. It's really good poetry. I'll include a link to the first post in the series in the show notes, and thank you as well to Possum Kingdom for your support as always. Alright, next up we'll dive into the top stories from Flash Fiction February Week 2, right after a quick word from this week's sponsor. Today's episode of the Saved as Draft podcast is sponsored by Productivity Pal. Hey, how's the writing going? What? Oh, sorry. I was just daydreaming. That's like 80% of the creative process. I'm sure you know.
I don't think that's right.
No, it's true. Everyone says that. It's a real stat. Seems to me like you need something to keep you focused. Oh, yeah. Good call. Maybe some coffee?
I was thinking something with a little more of a jolt.
Oh, cool. So like an energy drink?
Nah. Here, try this keyboard. It's called a Productivity Pal.
Huh. Seems pretty cool. Nice clicky keys. What makes it so special?
Oh, you'll see. Start writing.
Okay. Oh, I've hit a rough spot. It's time to daydream. Resume writing now. Okay, but I was just brainstorming. Resume writing. This is your final warning. This thing's pretty scary. What's it gonna do if I don't start writing? Oh, that was super painful.
Yeah, you, better get back to writing, bud.
Oh, yeah. Okay, here I go. Find yourself getting distracted? Find your writing flow with the Productivity Pal. If you need a jolt, it'll give you 10,000 volts straight into your fingertips. Order yours today. And we're back. It's time to take a look at the top stories from week 2 of Flash Fiction February. We'll go through each bracket and look at the top 5 individual stories that scored the highest based on likes, comments, and restacks. Let's get started with our lightweight bracket, which is for authors who have between 0 and 100 subscribers here on Substack. We'll start at 5th place and work our way up. So at 5th place this week, in the lightweight leaderboard, we've got The Assassins of Dreadfall Moor by Ludin Gray's Symposium, with a score of 12 points as of this recording. This piece was for the Day 9 prompt and is also a prequel to Ludin Gray's upcoming dark fantasy novel, The Executioner Prince. I love it when authors use the prompts to expand their existing worlds. This piece reads a bit like a blend of prose and poetry, but I love the dark atmosphere and the beautiful word choice. The perspective here is from an upcoming book's main character, and I love how we get a feel for their personality and their conviction in this piece. Let's check out an excerpt. I roll the dice. I am the dealer. I am the darkness, which night calls upon to cradle its shadows, to lay them to rest. Inside that cold corridor do they lay, choking on mistakes they could not keep at bay. Desperate, wretched, gurgling drowns out their prayers. Beautiful. Really love this one. It has me immediately interested in the dark fantasy novel as well. What did you think of this one, Lord Devereaux?
This piece is a delectable narrative morsel, a bite that offers rich flavors of intrigue and focus. It leaves the palate wanting more. I will indeed be devouring more of this author's work very soon.
Coming in at 4th place on the lightweight leaderboard is Game Night by Sarah Tinney with a score of 16 points. Sarah took this prompt in a sort of action comedy direction, and I gotta say, I was cracking up at that ending. Let's just say this killing game has a lot in common with Tic-Tac-Toe. You'll see what I mean when you read it, but I love how this piece took place in your classic business conference type setting, but for assassins. That visual image was hilarious to me as I was reading it. Let's check out a quick excerpt. A small-time mob boss lay face down on his bed, a single gunshot to the head. The group looked around. It was too generic to be someone's calling card. Amateur, someone muttered. Didn't even use a silencer. Everyone knew the police wouldn't be involved. Inviting a cop to an international assassins conference would be like letting a kid loose in a candy store. The conference organizers tried to determine what happened while the conference continued. They sourced floor plans of the building to identify escape routes, noting that each floor contained 9 rooms arranged in a 3x3 grid. They marked the top left room with an X to indicate where the victim was. As the day progressed, the bodies started piling up. More gunshots and now victims stabbed in the chest. Conference goers debated whether there were now 2 killers on the loose. There was talk of abandoning the conference, but professional curiosity kept people in attendance, wondering who could pull off these kills right under their noses. That was a good one. Lord Devereaux, what'd you think of this one?
Sarah's flash fiction continues to be a unique treat for the palate each week. Her experience with this form of writing plays a key role in her success thus far in the challenge. I never quite know what to expect, but that has proven to be my favorite part.
In 3rd place this week on the lightweight leaderboard, it's It Tastes the Same by Mike McClure, aka Every Root, Every Thorn, with 17 points. This story is also for Day 9's Assassin prompt, and what I loved about this story was the richness of the detail and atmosphere. It manages to pack a ton of presence into the word count along with some excellent foreshadowing that comes to fruition nicely in those final moments. Now, I don't want to spoil things too much, but I do hope to see more work set in this universe. It's a story that hints at a larger world, like this is a slice of something much bigger, and I think great flash fiction should do that. It's a fun read, and deeply atmospheric. Let's check out an excerpt. A shadow, like that of a small animal at their feet, stirs from behind their chairs before they finally get up, but it doesn't move. It just calmly licks one hand and cleans its head. The fool's brought a house pet to a meeting of killers? She scoffs at the audacity, but on the surface says nothing. The corner of the cat's eyes narrow when she looks away. They place their letters on the table with the rest of ours. With all seals now together in the ritual circle, a slight hum reverberates throughout the room. After only a moment, the seals on each letter break. I hope it's something subtle, like when we give the blankets as gifts. Such warmth. Reshef sounds almost giddy with anticipation. Deborah quietly agrees. Mazakin whispers from the shadows that he prefers to kill up close, and when they least expect it. Like a shadow at their own feet, rising up to wrap my hands around their neck. Soccer's smile somehow deepens, but he says nothing. I lean forward just enough for a show as I pick up my letter and say directly to Aluka before reading, I prefer to let others do the work for me. The skeletal frame still held in his arms breaks, just enough to finally fall on the floor from his lap. Very nice. Lord Devereux, what'd you think of this one?
The intersection of atmosphere and immersion is where the deepest flavors are found. This piece entices the palate with strong characters and a stronger sense of intrigue and betrayal. Like any good appetizer, it leaves the devourer wanting more.
Our second place story in the Week 2 Lightweight Leaderboard is Do Simulated Bees Dream of Simulated Roses by Dave Boyko, with a score of 22 points. I love that reference to Philip K. Dick's novel in the title there. Very nice. This one is for the Day 8 prompt, in which I asked writers to deliver a story about a maintenance worker who ensures our universe's simulation stays up and running. The twist is that someone sees you working, which is a big no-no. Dave's story last week that made the leaderboard was hilarious, and honestly, this one is even funnier. He took the concept here in a really fun direction. It stars a maintenance worker trying to tweak the color of roses in the simulation when a human walking his dog stumbles upon him in the early morning. Over the course of their conversation, the human gets turned into a dog temporarily, but the worker promises to change him back if he can keep his mouth shut. It's a very funny scene, and the ending is perfect as well. One final joke to cap off a very hilarious entry. The dialogue is extremely good here too. The jokes are snappy, and in dog form, the dialogue reads like a script from Scooby-Doo in the best way possible. In fact, let me give you an example. Let's check out an excerpt. This is all a simulation! The awe in his voice is even deeper. He starts to look around. I've heard the wackos talking about this on the net. They're right? Julie's voice cuts in. Pete, what are you doing? Not now, Julie, I mutter, then turn and look at the Simulman. Yep, you figured it out. This is all a simulation, and I'm the all-powerful programmer. Of lawns and bushes, Julie corrects, snidely. Shh, I whisper, and then turn to the Simulman. I'm about to speak, and I realize that he's about to run. A quick set of keystrokes, and I see him start to stumble and go down to all fours. The Simul dog says, sitting back on its haunches and regarding its forelegs. The all-powerful programmer, I remind the confused-looking Simul dog. The Simulman body seems to be taking it a little better as he starts to crawl around and sniff at the lamppost. I can do whatever I want, so you'd better pay attention. The poor guy whimpers. You don't have to be, I say with a note of confidence. Promise not to say anything to anyone, and I'll put you back in your body. Too funny. Lord Devereux, what'd you think of this one?
This Dave Boyko author is quite the contender in this challenge. Their writing is full of confidence. The flavors of comedy come through beautifully, and the dish feels cohesive as a result. Another delicious story full of bright, satisfying flavors.
And our first place story for the Week 2 Lightweight Leaderboard is Carried by the Code by Soren Cloud with a score of 25 points as of this writing. The story was for the Day 8 prompt as well, but what I love about this one is how Soren took things in a unique direction. Our maintenance worker here is by all intents and purposes a robot. They are coded to act human, and specifically a human from 1850. As a result, the story has a calculated sort of narration style, but it works because later in the piece, our robotic protagonist begins to feel things. The confusion comes through nicely in the prose, and the internal battle they face feels genuine as a result. It's quite a heartwarming piece by the end, And I really love those final lines as well. It leaves you thinking, but it also ensures you leave with a smile on your face. Let's check out an excerpt. Would you like to come in? I was becoming aware of frustrating contradictions in my code. This was highly indecent, but I knew I should enter still. My patience was nearly at its end. Only, I had overwritten it once, and it had gotten me into this situation. You are most kind, Miss Thoreau. Her apartment was pleasant. The tea she offered me, right. The first thing she asked caught me off guard. Are you real? Of course I'm real. I needed to lead the conversation away from this topic. My answers could destroy her. Actually, I think the whole universe is a simulation. Should I go back to the topic of indecent relations? I think that would be less dangerous. I really should be going. Thank you for the tea. Oh, but you just got here. Will I see you again? Very likely. Love it, love it, love it. Lord Devereux, what'd you think of this one?
To write from the perspective of an artificial being is a task that will challenge any writer. How does one convey a robotic personality without losing the interest of the reader? Soren balances this carefully and expertly in this piece. The flavors of intrigue and curiosity come through between the rigid rule sets of code. An intriguing flavor combination that I rather enjoyed.
All right, and that's our Week 2 Lightweight Leaderboard Top 5. Next, we'll take a look at the top 5 stories from our Middleweight Leaderboard. This bracket is for authors with 101 to 300 subscribers. Let's check out the top 5 stories for this bracket from Week 2. Coming in at 5th place for our Week 2 Middleweight Leaderboard, it's Tuesday Night by Wendy Russell with a score of 15 points. This piece was for Day 10's prompt, which is a cozy sci-fi concept about someone who discovers the stars are going out and manages to stumble upon a baby alien that needs their help as well. With this piece, Wendy took a measured approach that weaves in a sense of the profound, with a deep sadness and acceptance by the end. It caught me off guard, but that's often the case with Wendy's work. She's very good at subverting expectations while keeping the reader engaged. A lot of this comes down to her dialogue, which is always insanely good. That's the case here as well. The conversation between the tiny alien and the human is reflective, genuine, and heartfelt. It's calculated, but also laced with intent. Let's check out an excerpt so you can see what I mean. I stood there holding it while the sky above us continued its quiet subtraction. It took a moment before it spoke. Not because it was deciding what to say, because speaking required a body that was still negotiating its own edges. You can put me down, it said eventually. The voice was thin, older than it sounded. It already arrived tired. I don't think you want that, I said. A pause, then very calmly. You're right. I adjusted my grip again, more carefully this time. The towel had warmed further, the fabric creasing where it had grown too large for what it held. What are you? I asked. It considered the question. I could feel that consideration, a faint rebalancing in my hands. Earlier, it said, I was someone who could finish the work. And now? And now, I'm what's left when a system fails gracefully. Oh, beautiful writing. Lord Devereux, what'd you think?
The greatest flavors are the ones that linger on the palate. While I enjoy a story like this, I often think back to the sensations it left me with. For humans, this translates to thoughts and concepts. But for a being like myself, I can taste the emotion. And true emotion lingers. I will think about this piece often as time marches onward. Exceptional work.
And our 4th place story for the Week 2 Middleweight Leaderboard is That Dinner Party Episode by Felix Thornfell with a score of 17 points as of this writing. This is for Day 9's prompt, which asks for a story about a gathering of assassins where one is contracted to kill all the others without their knowledge. With this one, Felix takes a comedic approach that works really well. The assassins are all chatting about their favorite episode of The Office, and the dialogue feels natural and fun. It makes you want to sort of let your guard down and relax, which is precisely the point. By the end, a straight line of dialogue will have you raising your eyebrows before the ending drops a bombshell. It's a beautiful mic drop moment, and I loved it. Really fun work this week from Felix. Let's check out an excerpt. Blue's reply died on the table as the steel door behind them opened. Both turned their heads slowly. Ah, Purple, we were just discussing the best Office episode ever. Purple didn't speak. He walked in with only the sound of wooden wingtips clacking on the tile floor and sat down at the table. A crease formed between Blue's brows, then turned back to red. She is such a mess. She went from powerhouse to slob in just a few seasons. Michael kept her from being even worse than that. Oh, please, Red shook his head. Did you know that when she throws that Dundee to Michael's TV, she nailed it each take? A grunt was the only thing Purple contributed. And Jan's actress was supposed to be in Back to the Future, Red continued. She was Jennifer Parker until they brought in Michael J. Fox. That got Blue, now visibly entertained, to sit up. That's right. Too tall to something. 3 beers landed with a clink on the table. Purple, still silent, opened them one by one, handed one to Blue, one to Red, and kept the third for himself. He raised his glass and held it there, waiting. The others hesitated just a hair, then lifted theirs to meet it. Ha! There's treachery afoot, methinks. Lord Devereux, what'd you think of this one?
Felix manages to surprise the palate with this wonderful story of camaraderie that quickly devolves into terror by the end. The truth comes swiftly and silently, captivating the taste buds in a final moment of delicious and devilish delight. I rather enjoyed this one.
Our third place story on the Week 2 middleweight leaderboard is The Conference of Knives by Loki Cone with a score of 22 points as of this writing. This was for the Day 9 prompt, which was the story about assassins. Right off the bat, Loki Cone's signature style comes through. The first few lines perfectly set the stage with some beautiful imagery. As the story goes on, Loki Cone leans into the mystery of the prompt beautifully. The assassins start getting picked off, and the way out becomes blocked. As the tension rises, they scramble to make sense of what's happening and who is responsible. The whole story has shades of John Wick as well. Loki Cone brings a reverence and seriousness to the prompt that I really loved here. It all feels like a tightly written action film in the best way. Let's check out an excerpt, because the writing is really what shines the most here. The first to die was a woman named Kelso, who excused herself during the opening remarks and walked down the hallway past the vending machines and the photographs of the conference center in better days. She pushed open the door to the women's restroom and saw her own face in the mirror under lights that made everyone look sick or already dead. The person who followed her inside moved without sound, and the blade that opened her throat was so sharp she barely felt it. Her blood ran across the white tile in patterns like the roots of some dark tree, and by the time someone found her, the pooled liquid had already begun to congeal at the edges. They discovered her body 20 minutes later, and there was discussion about calling the police, but Renner pointed out that none of them could afford that kind of scrutiny. Someone suggested they leave immediately, but the doors had been locked from the outside, and the windows were the kind that did not open, and when they tried their phones, they found no signal, as if the building itself had been designed for this singular purpose. Beautiful, sleek, and atmospheric writing. What'd you think of this one, Lord Devereux?
Loki Cone pens stories with a confidence and finesse that I have rarely seen. Each word is carefully placed, but more so, the flow of the story imparts rich and lasting flavors upon the palate. It is graciously, carefully, beautifully constructed. Truly an experience for all the senses.
All right, and next up, first and second place on the middleweight leaderboard are actually tied as of this writing. But that being said, our next story for the middleweight leaderboard is Star Eyes by the Cursed Dragon, aka the Circus Dragon, with 24 points. This story is immediately exciting because the author herself recorded narration for it. She did an amazing job. I listened to it right away and read along, and I have to recommend you do the same. It's fantastic work. This story is for the Day 10 prompt, which is a cozy sci-fi. That atmosphere immediately comes through in both the storytelling and narration. There's a warmth to the way that she narrates it that I really loved, and it's there from the beginning. And of course, I loved how, as part of the prompt, there's obviously supposed to be a baby alien that falls from the sky. In this story, the fallen star/alien was actually a dragon. I love that. It's very on brand for this writer. Now, I won't spoil everything, but this is a fun and wonderful read with some great emotion. And honestly, again, I cannot recommend the audio narration enough. It really adds to the experience. Let's check out an excerpt. It was a few days after noting how weird some of the usual constellations were looking before they finally released the news to us common folk. Essentially, please be prepared because the world might be ending. So, Dad and I brought out the old telescope he had, just to document this apparent end of the world. We attempted to chart out the missing stars from the sky, the handle of the Big Dipper, Scorpio's tail, then Orion lost his belt, which led to some sniggering between us. This all felt rather morbid, really, everyone waiting to die. There would be floods, probably. Some said diseases. For some reason, and maybe volcanic activity? We didn't know who to believe, but there was a sort of calm to it, this waiting. Finally, we were each slowing down from all the hustle and bustle, spending time with one another, looking at each other like, really looking, and telling the people that we loved, I love you. I just want you to know. Joke was on us, though. The world did not actually end. Wonderful. Lord Devereux, how'd you like this one?
Cozy fiction is comfort food for a being like me, and even better when I can experience the story in audio form as well. This combination here took me back to a simpler time, a time when stories were written by hand or inscribed upon stone. There's a nostalgia here that I cannot quite place, but it is truly one of the most delicious stories I have yet tasted from this group of writers. It's a flavor that brings a tear to my eye.
I couldn't agree more. Now, as of this writing, we have another story tied for first place with 24 points. It's The Annual Review by J.M. Gooding. This one continues the John Wick feel that I mentioned from Loki Cohn's piece, but J.M. leans into the subterfuge and betrayal of the assassin line of work beautifully here. There's a moment shortly into what is otherwise a bog-standard business presentation that you realize something is very, very wrong. The presentation continues, but the viewers all start acting like they've been poisoned or they're having a heart attack. The juxtaposition of chaos and order in this scene is yet another example of why I love reading JM's work. It sets the stage, puts the players into position, and then unleashes its vision upon the reader. It flows perfectly, it's paced perfectly, and the whole scene is beautifully cohesive as a result. JM is a master storyteller, and I've known this for some time, but it's nice to see him get the recognition he deserves at the top of the leaderboard here. I hope the view from the top is as good as you'd hoped, my friend. You very much deserve it. Let's check out an excerpt. He taps to the next slide. It's blank. Division in the guild has reached a critical point. Standards slipping. Young blood chasing theatrical kills. Old blood coasting on reputation. Subtlety, once our pride, now an afterthought. Someone near the center coughs. Sharp. Sudden. The keynote's gaze doesn't move. A second issue. Lack of discipline. Some of you have become... He studies his notes. Creatives. Soft snickers. Then another cough from the left. Wet. Rattling. One assassin shifts in his chair. Another rubs at her sternum. The keynote speaks through it. We've traced 23 high-profile exposures this year. 23. Do you understand how unacceptable that is? A man tried to stand but catches the table's edge, knuckles whitening as his arm trembles. What the hell? No one answers. They're all too busy feeling something slide wrong in their chests. A creeping heat, a tightening behind the jaw. See, notice that dread that builds up in that excerpt? It's really great writing from J.M. Gooding as always. Lord Devereaux, what did you think?
J.M. Gooding is a writer who can deliver a delectable dish across all manner of genres. His emotional flavors are always rich and vibrant. Whether he wishes to instill fear, dread, loss, pain, or joy, he does so with a deft hand. I do so enjoy the flavor of this author's work.
Amazing, and another congrats to all our middleweight winners this week. Now it's time for the heavyweight leaderboard. This bracket is for authors with 300 subscribers or more. So let's see who made the cut this week. At 5th place with 31 points as of this writing, it's The Playpen Incident by Rebecca Watson. This is another assassin story for the Day 9 prompt, and Rebecca's approach here is amazing. She breaks up the story into multiple POVs that introduce us to each of the assassins. I was actually hoping someone would do this approach, actually. Now, as you read, you may notice some familiar names. Not to spoil the surprise, but it does indeed seem like Rebecca turned several substackers into badass assassins for this story. I recognize a lot of the names in here, and yes, in case you're wondering, I do have a character. And let me just say, Rebecca nailed my personality and sense of humor in the dialogue. I mean, this was really, really cool. Not only is it super creative, but the shifting between all the POVs here makes the pacing just rock solid. The story moves at a brick pace, and it adds to that intensity and action. Let's check out an excerpt. The silence at the table grows teeth. Is there a problem, Victor? Mina asks, her hand hovering near the edge of her seat. Just the water, I say, eyeing the puddle. A shame. I was thirsty. Joel suddenly stands up, the sound of his chair scraping the floor as a starter pistol. I'm done waiting. He doesn't just stand, he lunges, but his foot slips on the water I'd spilled. As he goes down, his boot hammers the pressure plate. Mina dives for her gun, but as she pulls it, Bradley finally mashes the button in his pocket. The ceiling screams. The iron chandelier tears free from the plaster, a screaming weight of metal. It slams into the center of the table exactly as the Claymore mine detonates. The world turns into a roar of orange fire and white dust. The laminate table disintegrates into toothpicks. The shockwave throws me back against the back wall, my lungs collapsing under the pressure. Plaster rains down. The neon sign shatters, plunging us into a strobe-like chaos of red sparks and gray smoke. Through it all, the muffled bass line keeps thumping from the main stage. Thump, thump, thump. Someone out there is having a great night. I roll onto my stomach, reaching for a backup blade. Across the ruins of the room, Joel is coughing, his massive frame covered in white dust. Mina is crouched behind a tipped-over sofa, her micro-pistol aimed at my head. Bradley is pinned under a piece of the chandelier, his eyes wide, holding a jagged piece of the iron frame like a shiv. "Don't shoot!" Bradley yells, his voice cracking. I was hired to kill Victor! Mina freezes. "I was hired to kill you, kid. And the big guy." Joel sits up, spitting blood. "Wait! My contract said clean the room. All three of you." Now, I might be biased, but this is probably one of my favorites I've read so far this month. I mean, this was phenomenal. Lord Devereaux, what did you think?
It's not often we see POV changes within a flash fiction piece. The combination of flavors is difficult to create without overwhelming the palate. Of course, Rebecca seems to be a seasoned writer because the structure here only adds to the dish. It truly becomes more than the sum of its parts by the end.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm pretty cool in this story, yeah?
Yes, you were pretty cool, as the humans say.
Hell yeah. All right, let's move on. Next up, and making her debut on the Flash Fiction February Heavyweight Leaderboard, it's the Mistress of Mayhem herself. That's right, folks. In fourth place this week, we have A Day in the Life by Mina Howell, with a score of 41 points. This story was for Day 8's prompt, which asked for a sci-fi about a maintenance worker who fixes a simulation we're all living in. According to Mina, this story was also inspired by the fact that The Sims got broken by its recent update. I do so hate it when that happens. Right off the bat, I love the edgy narration here. This is someone who has a bone to pick with the universe, and it makes for some excellent prose. With each line, I'm nodding along because, yeah, I can relate to all of this. The story takes a dark turn toward the end where management becomes aware of the protagonist's mistake, which was, of course, a part of the prompt. The ending is chilling, and it ties well into the earlier parts of the story, bringing everything full circle. Now, on a quick side note, as someone who's been following Mina's work for over a year now, I'm really amazed at how far she's come as an author. This story is a great way to get acquainted with her writing style, but one thing I'll say is that she's also become extremely adept at writing multiple types of writing voices as of late. That is not an easy skill to pick up, my friends, and I love how she shifted her writing voice here to suit the tone of the story. She does this with all of her series. If you read, for example, Ophiocordyceps and Redemption is Overrated, that's two completely different writing voices coming from the same author. It's really impressive stuff. Let's check out an excerpt from this piece. As I make my way to that particular sidewalk, there's a crowd gathered around it. They won't be able to see me, perks of the job, but they keep sending children on skateboards to hit that spot, just to see how far they'll fly. I heard them say that it's a trend on TikTok, whatever that is. The children gather up as much speed as they can, and they make a video of their flight. Some kids have apparently ended up in Marrakesh. I've got to fix this. I squeeze my way through the sea of sticky children that have gathered, and I get to work. With a wave of my hand, the fabric of the universe opens before me. There it is. The one that's meant to be a zero. I grab the one, and it starts to fight back. Its mechanical screams vibrate my teeth and raise the hair on my arms. It wants to stay a one. Ones have much more fun. That's too damn bad, I mutter to myself as I stretch it, bending it back into the zero it was always meant to be. I used to feel bad when I did this. Sometimes a zero feels like a one on the inside. I really do understand, but if they glitch, I get yelled at, and I can't lose out on another raise. Relatable and wonderfully written. Lord Devereaux, what'd you think of this one?
Mina has certainly become a narrative chameleon in the time since I last sampled her work during the first indulgence. She presents fresh and vibrant flavors here that my palate does not recognize, but embraces wholeheartedly. Truly, the greatest writers over time can don multiple skins and voices, like a narrative shapeshifter. It seems our mutual friend has indeed obtained such a power.
Coming in at third place on our Week 2 Heavyweight Leaderboard, it's Theo and Juno, VR Maintenance, by Verdant Butterfly, with a score of 66 points as of this writing. This is for the Day 8 prompt about a maintenance worker in the simulation of our universe. I'm really excited to see our friendly neighborhood butterfly on the leaderboard this week. This story features two of her reoccurring characters, and it also showcases her signature creativity and humor. It's a really fun story with great dialogue, pacing, and jokes that land every time. In this case, she took the prompt in a direction where our two maintenance workers need to address an NPC baker who's become aware that he's an NPC in a simulation. He saw the Sky reboot, and that led to several other realizations that sent him spiraling into an existential crisis. And honestly, mood. The story moves at a brisk pace, layering in some code and messages from the system in there for added immersion, and it all just fits beautifully together. The amount of detail and polish that Verdant Butterfly puts into her work is always amazing. If you're not already a fan, this story will make you a believer. She never misses. Let's check out an excerpt. Theo blinked. Juno? She didn't look up from her tea. If the fire starts flickering in Morse code, tell it to keep that to itself. It's clapping. She glanced over. That's different. The flames clapped once more, bowed, then resumed being fire. Okay, she said. Someone absolutely touched the back-end code. A notification slid into view, jittering slightly. Notice. Reality maintenance in progress. Please remain unaware. This means you. Theo squinted. That last line feels personal. At that same moment, an IT squirrel dropped from the ceiling, hit their table, and overlapping air windows exploded into their view. Tiny vest, headset, clipboard held together with electrical tape. It stared at them with the exhausted intensity of someone whose job title had recently changed to, and also do this. Hi, it squeaked. Quick question, hypothetically. If I offered you an admin quest, would you take it, no follow-ups? Juno took a slow sip. What happened? Nothing, the IT squirrel said immediately. Then quieter. An NPC is having an existential crisis and is becoming aware. Theo winced. Again? Yes. Which one? The squirrel checked its clipboard. A level 4 baker in the bread district. Juno sighed. It's always food service. Okay, but seriously, as someone who worked in food service briefly, these kind of jobs are absolutely bound to give you an existential crisis. Lord Devereaux, what'd you think of this one?
It is glorious to once more sample the works of our butterfly friend. Much like an accomplished chef, I always know my expectations will be surpassed. The flavors in this piece are rich and beautifully rendered. Comedy, philosophical undertones, and a slight aftertaste of existential dread. A delicious story.
All right, our second place story for the Week 2 Heavyweight Leaderboard is Pardon the Dust by Mary Ellen Brady with a score of 67 points. So, this one's just 1 point ahead of Butterfly as of this writing. They're neck and neck. This piece is also for the Day 8 prompt, and in classic Mary Ellen fashion, she went all out with her entry. Not only is it exceptionally well written as always, but the depth of science and technology mixed into the prose is wonderful. She bridges the gap between fiction and reality like no one else I've read when it comes to her science fiction works. In this piece, we get a beautiful mix of comedy and intrigue as the story begins with our maintenance worker fixing a glitchy fire hydrant in the simulation. A human manages to see what they're doing, and before you know it, they're posting about it on Reddit, in the R Glitch in the Matrix subreddit, which I'm fairly certain is a real subreddit. This story's structure is great as well. Mary Ellen jumps between the events of the past and an interrogation happening in the present, where our protagonist is being questioned by their supervisor. As always, I'm just blown away by the sheer amount of detail and depth that Mary Ellen fits into a flash fiction piece like this. I mean, I have stories twice as long that are nowhere near as nuanced and well written as this one. Her talent as a writer cannot be understated. Let's check out an excerpt. The man was holding a basket of laundry. He looked about 40, balding, wearing a Minnesota Timberwolves hoodie, and the expression of someone whose entire worldview was currently being rendered obsolete. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. I did the only sensible thing. I hit paste and I ran. Define ran, my supervisor said. I executed a rapid spatial translation, I said, to the other side of the building, while the human could still see you. Technically, no. I'd already toggled invisibility back on, after he'd watched you copy-paste a fire hydrant. In my defense, I said, the documentation claims humans can't perceive interface elements without proper authentication credentials. My supervisor, a being of pure energy who insisted on rendering as a middle-aged woman in a pantsuit for professionalism, pinched the bridge of her nose. Gerald Finch, she said, reading from a screen that only she could see. Age 42, occupation, insurance adjuster. Currently separated from his wife. No children, no prior history of anomalous perception. She looked at me. How? I'm still running diagnostics, but I think it's his pacemaker. His pacemaker. It's a St. Jude medical model, PM2210, manufactured in 2019. The firmware has a known vulnerability, CVE-2019-7854, creates electromagnetic interference in a very specific frequency range that apparently resonates with our cloaking protocols. You're telling me this man can see through reality because of a recalled medical device? I'm telling you it's on the known issues list, page 4012, filed under low priority. So good. Lord Devereaux, what'd you think of this one?
Mary Ellen's stories continuously surprise and delight the palate in ways that astonish me. After all, I have sampled the works of all the greatest writers throughout history, but many of them pale in comparison to Mary Ellen's craft. Any genre, any story, any challenge, she rises to the occasion and produces a feast for the senses each and every time. Truly impressive.
All right, and this week's first place story on our heavyweight leaderboard is Pardon Our Dust by Sarah Encarnacion. I love how this story just swept the leaderboard this week. I don't know if I've read any works from this author, but after this, I am excited to read more. This particular story for the Day 8 prompt combines sci-fi and comedy beautifully into a piece that had me in stitches all the way through. I think my favorite part was when the sky flickers and a star in the sky displays its internal name in the simulation. The file name up in the sky is something insane like star_final version 7 use this one for real, which made me laugh so hard. Honestly, there's a lot of standout lines in this piece, and the jokes are superb. There's a part where the human asks if the universe is a simulation, and our protagonist responds by asking, if this was a simulation, why would we add student loans? It's really, really good. Let's check out an excerpt. You fixing something? The human asked. Of course he had a coffee. Humans only ever discover cosmic truths while holding hot beverages. No, I said. Yes. I gestured vaguely. Urban renewal? The human squinted. Reality stuttered. A pigeon nearby rebooted, facing the wrong direction. That doesn't look normal, he said. I hate perceptive ones. They always come with follow-up questions. Normal is a setting, I said. We turned it off in 2016. He laughed. Nervous. Good sign. So, this is a simulation? He asked. Ah, yes, the forbidden phrase. We're trained to redirect it using humor, bureaucracy, or mild existential humiliation. If this were a simulation, I said, why would we include student loans? He stopped smiling. That's fair. Amazing work. Lord Devereaux, what'd you think of this one?
It is always quite exciting when a new author joins the leaderboard. I must say the flavors of humor in this story are exceptional. I've devoured many tales in my life, and humor is perhaps the most difficult flavor to get right. It must be carefully balanced alongside others upon the palate. This author is indeed quite skilled. I look forward to more of their work.
All right, and that's our leaderboards for week 2. Now, this weekend I will post a mid-month challenge update where I'll share the top 10 authors in terms of total score across each bracket. That'll be your first look at where each bracket stands and who's in the lead for the challenge as a whole, so stay tuned for that on Sunday. Next up, we've got our featured guest interview, but first, a look at this week's Indie Release Radar. Hello and welcome to the second Indie Release Radar of February 2026, powered by Bookstack. Here we'll feature some recent indie book releases. You ready, Arnold?
Yeah! I have 200 flash fiction stories to read. Hey, but what's a few more books?
That's the spirit. Okay, let's dive in. First up is In the Midnight Garden by Holly Ann. In a world where curses and death creeps around every crevice, Valeria McAllister finds herself bounded to a monstrous fate. Forced into marriage that promises only despair, her life breaks when a blood-soaked stranger rips her from that doomed path. To survive, she now has to uncover the captor's true name, which becomes the only hope for escape from the spectral castle that holds her. But as she delves deeper into secrets kept shrouded by the darkness, she finds not the beast she once expected. Now, with each passing moment, the lines of good and evil blurring, Valeria finds herself falling for the one creature she should fear most. Discover what happens in the vampiric retelling of Beauty and the Beast when In the Midnight Garden arrives on February 13th. Next up is Read This for Psychic Damage by Tommy Wyatt Blake. Read This for Psychic Damage is a poetry chapbook consisting of poems about abuse and the erasure of abusers' messages. Content warnings include sexual situations, toxicity, and domestic violence. And as a bonus, every pre-order arrives with a handmade zine featuring a random title from Tommy. If you're intrigued, catch this short poetry book when it comes out on February 14th. Next up is Terms and Benefits by Chahak Kawatra. Elena Singh has worked far too hard to let anyone or anything see her father, and 7 years ago life taught her to build something lasting, without letting her heart into it. But when she discovers her business partner's betrayal, she's faced with the one thing she has always struggled with, asking for help. Daniel Rexley has spent years cleaning up his family's legacy. Now a businessman, he's clean and polished, and exactly the kind of son he thought his parents would approve of, except he's still a disappointment. But when fate gives him a chance to fix everything and help the woman he once walked away from, well, how could he say no? Nothing between Alina and Daniel has ever been easy, and as old emotions resurface, they must decide together, are they strong enough to last? Find out on February 14th. Thanks again to Bookstack for helping us get the word out about indie author releases. Now, back to the show. All right, and we're back. This week, my guest on the show is someone I met through Audio Mazes. He's not currently on Substack, so I want to give you all a quick overview before we dive into the interview. My guest this week, Gabriel Garcia, is an indie author and storyteller who loves history. He writes in genres like fantasy, speculative fiction, historical fiction, and science fiction. Growing up in sunny Southern California, Gabriel developed a vivid imagination fueled by his interest in history and storytelling. He is inspired by authors such as Bernard Cornwell, Con Eagledon, and Brian Jacques, and draws on this inspiration to create stories that engage and motivate readers. Gabriel's writing journey started with his first novel, The Gathering. He worked hard on this book while earning his master's degree in history. This experience improved his writing and increased his appreciation for the historical settings in his stories. Since then, he has published 3 more books, each exploring different aspects of the human experience. Currently, he's writing his 5th novel, which promises to be an exciting addition to his work. In addition to writing books, Gabriel also hosts a podcast called Tales from the Wandering Scribe on YouTube. In his podcast, he talks with other writers and creatives about their experiences and stories. And fun fact, I was on the show last year. It is also a platform for exploring interesting historical topics with historians and fans. Gabriel invites listeners to join him on a journey through history, creating an engaging space for those curious about the past. And now that we're all acquainted, let's dive into this week's featured guest interview. All right, everybody, and this week on the Saved as Draft podcast, I'm excited to welcome to the show a fellow author and Audio Mazes author who I also consider a dear friend. Please welcome to the show, Gabriel Garcia. Gabriel, thank you for being here.
Bradley, I am honored to be on your show. I've heard a lot of great things. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to have you here. So let's start out by having you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your creative journey thus far.
Absolutely. So, hi, everybody. This is Gabriel Garcia. Many of you know me as The Wandering Scribe on YouTube and Instagram. And I've been writing for about now 5 years. I began my career as a writer professionally during the pandemic when I was pursuing my master's in history. I began with my first book, The Gathering. And from there, I've just been pumping out books 1 year at a time, and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love writing stories, meeting fellow authors like Bradley and many more. And honestly, I just love that I get a chance to do this and share with the world the stories that I have in my head.
Absolutely. Phenomenal answer. So you mentioned you started writing professionally during COVID. That's right, yeah?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. I've dabbled on the side before that. But when the lockdown happened, I was, as I said, pursuing my master's in history at San Francisco State. Now, at the time, San Francisco was allowing students to stay on campus during the early months of quarantine and the lockdown, but they issued a statement saying if you can go back to, the city that you're from or wherever you're from, then you have to leave campus because only the international students were allowed to stay because, at the time, airports and air travel was closed for safety reasons. So I had to go back home to SoCal. And while I was in SoCal, that's where I started really writing and just trying to stay busy because I wasn't on campus. I wasn't with my friends. I wasn't able to go anywhere. I was just confined to my room for classes and everything. So I needed an outlet.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So, rewinding the clock even further, then, my next question is, when was that moment in your life when you first realized you wanted to be a writer? And follow up to that, do you remember the first story that you ever wrote?
Oh, okay. Yes. So backpedaling a little bit.
Yeah.
So my sort of like passion or my aha for writing was actually from my teacher, Mrs. Trost at Esadillo Elementary.
Mm,
We actually had to do a project for Halloween, which was inspired by the Goosebumps books. I
nice.
used to read those a lot when I was growing up. Not as much now, but I enjoyed reading those stories. And I wrote a short story, and everyone seemed to love it. And I was like, okay, I can actually, possibly do this for fun. And the first story, oh, Bradley, you're really making me think because there are two candidates uh for this answer.
Mm,
So the first story that I attempted was called The Caldwell Chronicles, a pirate story inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean. Never finished it, so
mm,
it became a story on the back burner. But the story that I truly finished, that was truly a rough cut,
mm,
where I had no idea of, my voice as an author, what style of writing I wanted, that was The Warriors of Nairon.
mm.
And I wrote that for the contest at the time, Writers of the Future. I was, you know, unpublished. I did not know anything about copyright, and I submitted that. Didn't win, of course, but that gave me an inkling of, okay, I know I can write a full-fledged story. Let's see if I can write something that I am truly passionate about because Warriors of Nyrond was my first introduction into sci-fi, but I had not written or read sci-fi books up to that point.
Okay, okay, great answer. It's funny, I think I may have mentioned this to you, but I actually had my sort of aha writer moment in second grade when I was in elementary school. Very similar
Hmm.
story, so I love that. So yeah, next question I have for you here is I wanted to talk about some of the themes and topics that show up in your work most often, and also I'd love to know just kind of the full range of genres that you typically write in as well.
Absolutely, Bradley. Absolutely. So a lot of kind of like the themes that I like to incorporate in my stories are kind of like the classic themes of, good versus evil, the hero's journey, redemption, found families, and really those classic elements that we've seen in storytelling from Brian Sanderson and George R. Martin, J.R. Tolkien, and Frank Herbert's Dune, and many more. And the genres that I typically write in are mainly historical fiction, fantasy, and sci-fi, but I have delved into the subgenres of epic fantasy, historical fantasy, alt history, and now going into westerns for a future project down the road. And it's been a learning experience because each genre has its own expectations with writing style, tone, and stuff like that.
Right, right. I was gonna say I'm most familiar with your work that has kind of historical settings. So as a kind of follow-up question there, I'm curious when it comes to either alt history or kind of historical fiction, what is your process for kind of research and learning how to like write something set in a time period like that? Because I imagine it's a very involved process.
Absolutely, Bradley. And I'll actually use an example for this. So, the first book that really kind of pushed me into that style of writing was Son of Persia, which is a spin-off of The Gathering. And when writing Son of Persia, I really want to explore, okay, this character, not trying to give any spoilers for those who have not read the book, but there is a lot of time travel, a lot of, rediscovering one's identity. And the backdrop is, okay, Greece loses the Persian Wars. And there were so many articles and research of what would have happened. I had to look at, okay, what aren't they telling us?
Mm,
What is not being told? And from that point, that's when I did a lot of my research. And when researching for that book, Bradley, it really showed me, oh wow, it really would have changed history, but not to the extent. I'll even go even further. A lot of people assume that had Persia won the Greco Persian Wars, democracy would have been destroyed. That is not true. Up to the time of those wars, democracy had already spread into Rome and the Italian peninsula, and so forth.
Mm.
So democracy would have still existed. And we would have almost would have seen what the Romans did to the Greeks in our timeline. They conquered Greece. Yes, it became a province. Yes, their language may have been altered a little bit, their customs and culture, but not much else would have changed. That is the same thing that I learned in my research for Son of Persia. Greece would have been part of a much larger network of the Persian Empire. Languages would have been vastly different. Culture, relatively the same, but nothing very dramatic in the sense of, oh, Greece as an identity would have been extinct. No, they
Mm.
still would be Greek. They would just be Persian citizens. And that's not to say that Greek could have not, reclaimed its ancestral lands, or I should say, Greece could have reclaimed its ancestral lands later on in history. But again, the thing with alternate history and writing alternate history, there are so many avenues to explore. And ultimately, tying back to your original question, Bradley, in terms of research, I wanted to write something that could have been the most likely outcome and conclusion for this what if. And I carried that into my most recent publication, Decimus, the Wolf of Rome.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So what is it about, or what was it about kind of historical fiction and this kind of alternate fiction? What initially drew you to writing in that genre?
Well, I love reading historical fiction. One of
Mhm.
my favorite authors growing up in high school was Bernard. I always mess up his last name, so I'm gonna say it both. So Bernard Cornwell or Cromwell. People who listen to this, please let me know if I actually got the right name right. But he is the author of the Saxon Chronicles,
Mm.
which was originally titled the Last Kingdom series. Absolutely loved his work. I still love it. And from there, I branched out into other authors like Valerio Manfredi, Colin Eagledon, Stephen Pressfield, and more. And I love how each author takes its own spin of historical fiction, where you have the backdrop of history or an event or even a battle, but they're adding the human elements to it in their own way. And when doing research for Son of Persia, I was thinking of, okay, what kind of story am I going to write for Son of Persia? And that was, of course, an Odyssey tale. So I read historical fiction stories that focus on an Odyssey subplot.
Mm.
And from there, I was getting, research of how to incorporate history, characters interacting with real people. How would that work? Making sure they stay true to themselves, showcasing the authenticity and accuracy of the time period, but taking creative liberties when needed. And I think, in my honest opinion, Decimus, the Wolf of Rome, its sequel, really highlights that, really pushes that mindset to the extreme. Because a lot of people, a lot of reviewers have said that they really felt immersed in Rome. And that was what I was looking for. I wanted my readers to be immersed in a time period that they could visually see, even if they could never be there.
Mm. Hmm. I love how you describe that. It's like that atmosphere and immersion, the accuracy of the time period, but you leave it open to creative input and kind of creative liberties. That's an amazing combination. I love that.
Thank
So,
you.
for my next question here, as you may know, a lot of people that listen to the podcast are over on Substack. So I'm curious, have you put any thought yourself into starting a Substack? Is that in the cards for you at any point?
So, yes, I have seen a lot of people, a lot of our friends in the
Yeah.
Audio Mazes community, sorry, that are on Substack. And I think, first off, it's amazing that a lot of people are doing that. But for me, I have thought about it, but I don't want to stretch myself
Too thin.
too thin.
Right.
I do have a blog on my website,
Mm,
the Wandering Scribe, where I do post short stories. That is
mm.
where I post all of that. I have contemplated it on Substack, but for now, at the moment, I'm just going to leave my stories on my blog. Could that change later on? Absolutely. But for now, my stories will just be on my blog at the moment.
Okay, totally fair answer. And for everybody listening, we will have a link to your website in the show notes to check out some of those stories you have over there, and obviously everything else you've got going on. But yeah, fantastic answer. I was just curious. Would love to see you there, but totally understand not wanting to spread yourself too thin. So, from my next question here, I wanted to ask about your podcast that's been going on for a while now, because you actually interviewed me on it last year.
Hmm.
Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about that show and kind of what it's all about?
Absolutely, Bradley. So, yes, so The Wandering Scribe, which is my podcast on YouTube, actually has its origin story, which I don't tell a lot of people of it. So, going back again to the COVID years, the pandemic years, while I was writing my first book, The Gathering, I wanted to stay in touch with my friends that I have met on Inkit. That's where I began posting my stories there. And I realized, well, what else could I do? I mean, I've been on a few podcast interviews before, so why not me? Why couldn't I do it?
Hmm.
And so initially, I made an account on Anchor, which is now part of Spotify. And it was just, very basic, conversations I had with a lot of my friends. Jaden, who is also a member of the Audio Mazes community, was one of my first guests on the Wandering Scribe on Anchor.
Hmm.
And as time went on, I want to say around 2023, that's when I started to push the envelope and interview historians in addition to authors. And as time went on, and I was getting a lot of traction, and I realized a lot of people I was meeting were on Instagram, I decided to take a chance and think, well, I have a YouTube that I made in high school. Never used it for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
Let me actually use something. So went back to that channel, rebranded it, and just started doing interviews from there. And I want to say it was, apologies, not 2023, 2022. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
In December of 2022, that's when I began doing my first video interviews on YouTube. Now, I was still in the rough. I did not know how to do it. I didn't have a newsletter at the time. But once I found my footing, that's when everything started being very, very natural. I was getting more confident in myself as an interviewer. I was asking the right questions. I was getting forms for people to fill out so that way I could plan out my entire year. And honestly, Bradley, it's been insane. It's now been 3 years, now going on 4 years on YouTube.
Yeah.
But in total, I've been podcasting for about 7 years now, which is absolutely insane. And many of the people from my Anchor Spotify days have come over to the channel, and it's been an incredible thing. And I've learned so much from all the guests I've had, you included, Bradley, and just having that engagement and just realizing what I'm truly doing. I'm giving a platform
Mm.
to my fellow creatives in an industry which shouldn't be competitive, but in some cases it is.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we are pitted against each other by third parties, which is unfortunate to say, but it sometimes does happen. But ultimately, going back to your original question, Bradley, the Wandering Scribe, in its conception, is a safe space for authors, editors, narrators, historians, which also include students in history, professors in history, historical reenactors, and even historical content creators on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram. It is a safe space to have discussion, conversation, and really feel like you're a part of a community.
Mm. I love that so much. Yeah, your show has absolutely inspired multiple aspects of what I'm doing here on the Saved as Draft podcast, and it is amazing to see. And also, it goes without saying, I loved being a guest on your show as well. It was a fantastic interview. I'll have to include a link to that in the show notes here as well, so people can check that out. Now, you mentioned, kind of your process for interviews and stuff. For anybody that's listening that may want to be interested in getting interviewed by you on your show, what is the process for someone to potentially be interviewed by you? Where should they go?
Absolutely. So there are two ways. I have the links on my newsletter, which will provide
Hmm.
in the notes of this interview. And from there, people can apply. Now, I have different applications for people to apply to. I have the narrator editor interview form, I have the historian interview form, and I have, of course, the author and book review form. Now, if people may not be on LinkedIn, which is where my newsletter is at, then
Hmm.
people can message me directly, privately on Instagram. I'm very frequent on Instagram, and I will send them that link. Or if they want to go to my website also has the links to the application. So there are many different ways people can go and apply. And then once the application is sent, I will get a notification. I will reach out to my guests, schedule an interview for them. And I'm sure Bradley has told you all to his viewers and listeners that I schedule out people from the beginning of the year
Yeah.
all the way until the end. So I am always busy, always on the hunt for new guests, new people, and even returning guests to come back for follow up interviews or to be in part of a duo or a collaboration, anything.
Absolutely. Okay, great. That's really good to know. And yeah, we'll make sure to include all that in the show notes. Because I guarantee you there's some people in the community that listen to this show that would love to be interviewed by you.
Awesome.
So next up, I'd like to talk a bit more about your published works. You mentioned a few already, but how many books have you published? And can you give us kind of like an overview of, what's in your library of published works?
Absolutely. So I have them right here to show and tell. So the first book is, of course, The Gathering, which is my first publication. And as a little overview, it is Lord of the Rings meets time travel meets Magnificent Seven. Trapped in an alien world, you have seven humans from different battles in human history that are brought to this world. They don't know why they've been chosen. There's a huge mystery,
Hmm.
and they have to find their way back home while fighting a god who can manipulate time. And there is a potential for, or I shouldn't say potential, but there is a, what's the word I'm thinking of? There is a back door opening for the potential sequel for The Gathering, which I do have in the works.
Hmm.
And of course, that led to Son of Persia. Now, Son of Persia is not something I would call a direct sequel, but it's in the same universe as The Gathering. It follows one of the seven, Aminis Baru, and it focuses on the what if, not just the time period that he goes back to, but a what if for him. And this is the only spoiler that I will give. In the book The Gathering, the rule of time travel is this: if you were taken from a point in history and try to go back, you create a paradox. It is
Hmm.
not the same world. And that is what Son of Persia is. It is the first of these what ifs.
Hmm.
What if Amonis went back? How different would not only his life be, but the lives of the others from the gathering? And while I was writing the initial idea for Decimus, The Wolf of Rome, I was in the midst of writing my first ever fantasy novel, which is Michael, Last Angel of Earth. Now, if anyone in the audience has watched Samurai Jack, especially season five of Samurai Jack really played a lot into the creation of this book, as well as the Darksider video games.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is that you have the character Michael, Archangel Michael, the warrior angel, and he is the greatest warrior the Heavenly Council has ever seen. But something goes wrong. He ends up creating the greatest sin, which is killing humans. As punishment, he's stripped of his wings. He's not mortal, and since he's human, he's a Nephilim, but he can die. That's when Lucifer attacks, but he's not alone. He has the old gods with him from the old mythologies in human history.
Oh, that's cool.
They destroy the Heavenly Council. Michael is presumed to be the last angel on Earth, hence the title.
Mm.
And he and one human survivor find a colony. And 10 years go by, and they are living in hiding. Almost kind of like Logan from the Logan movie.
Mm.
And something does draw him back. And that is the premise of the book. He goes on this quest to reclaim his heavenly name. He gathers allies from all walks of life, humans, demigods, monsters, mythical beings, and ultimately putting him on a path of not just becoming an angel once more and reclaiming his name, but becoming a rebel leader and igniting a revolution and rebellion so large that it will be the biggest war on earth that humanity has ever seen. And when I finished writing this book, that's when I began Decimus, the Wolf of Rome. And Decimus, the Wolf of Rome is the direct sequel to Son of Persia, where you follow the other character, Decimus, and he finds himself in a completely different world. And it's actually in the Wolf of Rome that all of human history, Western history specifically, is completely changed.
Mm.
Hannibal and his brothers win the Second Punic Wars. And that is important because had Hannibal won in our timeline, Rome as an idea, as a military power and political power, is gone. They are not going to be the ones who conquer all of Europe and inspire the medieval age. It's not them. It is the Carthaginians. They expand through trade, not war. So, Sicily, North Africa, Spain, Egypt, and possibly almost all of North Africa will be under Carthaginian rule. They are the new power. But there's one problem. There's still talks of rebellion in the Italian peninsula. There are many Romans who are wishing to go back home. And I took a lot of inspiration from the film Patriot with Mel Gibson.
Mm.
And a lot of people have remarked on that comparison. And this was a very, very, very personal story because it was the last of my COVID books. All of these books were written during the time of COVID. And in fact, the original idea of Decimus was completed just before I was able to go back to San Francisco to complete my final 6 months of my master's program before graduating. So it was a very emotional time because after that, I was like, well, now I got to create something new. I got to create something entirely new. But going back to Decimus, now you find the character who now has to become a rebel leader. He now has to not only be a father figure to a displaced people, but also be a father to his son. And I loved writing that dynamic so much. And I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but if you enjoy films like Gladiator, Braveheart, Patriot, epic battles, grand tales, a lot of mystery, a lot of fantasy, which I should have mentioned previously that Amanus, Son of Persia, while alternative history is the main backdrop, there is a little element of fantasy since it is tied to the Gathering universe. So, yeah, Decimus, the Wolf of Rome was an absolute blast to write, and I'm so glad a lot of people have read it and have found it to be arguably one of the best books they have read thus far.
That is amazing. I just love the richness and depth and detail to your worlds, like I said, the historical aspect is really fascinating. I love the alternate history. I can already think of people on Substack who are going to be like, I need to read that. Um, but in particular, I wanted to also call out that you mentioned Darksiders, the video game series, as one of your inspirations for the Michael novel.
Hmm.
I loved those games as well, so I just had to compliment your taste and inspirations there because you have some great ones.
Thank you, Bradley. And going to Darksiders, I also wanted to make sure that the premise of Darksiders, which spoiler if you have not played the game, but ultimately the Darksiders series follows the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. The first
Hmm.
game follows War, second follows Death, third follows Fury, and potentially four is going to follow the last brother, Stripe.
Right.
Ultimately, the war between heaven and hell happens on Earth. And in the lore of the Darksiders, the Horsemen are only supposed to arrive when humanity reaches its height,
Mm.
its advanced potential. Someone breaks the seal and starts the war early, bringing the Horsemen. War. And war is deemed responsible. And there are so many other stories that are taking place in the midst of the first game. Two takes place around the same time as the first game to sort of reveal the truth and show his brother was innocent.
Right.
And that mindset of going on a quest to redeem yourself and to prove your worth and trying to make things right, I wanted to take that idea and apply it to an angel. What happens if an angel commits this? What happens if they are the ones who bring about the end of the world? How does that work? And I also want to touch on some real topics such as PTSD,
Hmm.
survivor's guilt, suicidal tendencies, because in the book, it is explicitly stated that Michael has attempted to take his own life, or Barjan, as he's gone by in the books for the longest time. He contemplates taking his own life because he cannot deal with the guilt, with the shame that he has committed. So that was really, really important that I highlighted that, but knowing when to pull myself out and not going too deep on a topic like this, because there are many ways that this could have gone so terribly wrong, which I'm sure you'll agree, Bradley, as a fellow author and writer, when writing sensitive topics,
Yeah.
it's this balance of respecting the idea in the sense of bringing awareness, but not glorifying it.
Right, right. Yeah, it's a very careful balance. I wholeheartedly agree. It's important to talk about it, but like you said, you don't want to glorify it. Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Great input there. Yeah, and yeah, I have yet to read Michael, and now it's shot to the top of my TBR list because your description of it was superb. So next up, I wanted to talk about, you mentioned it earlier in the interview, but I wanted to talk about your new website that you just launched. I myself don't even have an author website, but I'd like to make one. So my question for you is, what was the what was kind of some of the process and challenges that you went through trying to launch an author website, and what advice would you give to others trying to do the same?
Well, definitely it was a process. I have never made a website before, and I looked at a lot of other people's websites. Another good friend of ours, Aaron Wiedemeyer, whose website I looked at for inspiration. And I looked at many different avenues. I looked at GoDaddy, Wix, Canva, WordPress, and many more. And I realized, okay, GoDaddy seems to be the one that a lot of people agree. And once I got the domain and the website package, with the help of our lovely co-founder of Audio Mazes, Sophia Dujarjo, who was instrumental in helping me get like, okay, this is what you need to have, this is what you should include. She really helped me figure out what I should include on the website.
Hmm.
So, for advice for anyone wanting to get an author's website, definitely do the research of what's going to get the most traction for you. What website is deemed to be the safest? Because you want to make sure your website is going to be protected. No one's going to try to take your personal information. Know exactly what kind of website you want to make? Is it going to be a blog website? Is it going to be an author website where you want to eventually have an online store? Is it going to be more academic based if you want to highlight your academic achievements or your academic works? Definitely do a lot of research and set a goal for yourself. I had a goal for me when I was making my website that it would launch August of, I want to say August of last year. I had a goal for myself that I would get my website ready and I would highlight what did I want to have. I wanted to have an about me page. I wanted to have a page where I had all of my books. I also wanted to have a page where I could showcase my YouTube channel. So I did that. Then I added my LinkedIn newsletter, added my socials. I also now added my Goodreads page so people can follow me on Goodreads. I also made sure to highlight my narrators that I've worked with, a lot of whom are members of the Audio Mazes community, which you're going to see a pattern,
Hmm.
viewers and listeners, that everybody that I have met and worked with, ultimately, I want to make sure to highlight them. And it's been very, very amazing. A lot of people have enjoyed the websites. They are impressed by the professionalism. And ultimately, it kind of gives me a sense of like, okay, I am an author. I am what I'm supposed to be. It's a kind of a wake up call, which I'm sure you can definitely agree, Bradley, when you've made your Substack and, of course, made this incredible podcast series. You probably may have stepped back and realized, I am who I'm supposed to be. This is the community that I belong.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned that too, because earlier someone on Substack had tagged me in a little poem they wrote, and it was basically kind of a thank you to me for building the community that I've been building on Substack. And obviously, I restacked it over on there, and my thoughts that I added to it was that I'd spent my whole life trying to find a writing community to call my own, and I just never really clicked. Like I couldn't find one that I felt like I belonged in. So in the case of Substack, I just built it myself. And
Yeah.
it is crazy, like you said, to take a step back and see all the progress that you've made. It's really amazing stuff, and I so wholeheartedly admire and respect what you're doing as well to build community and to bring authors and people together. It's amazing stuff.
Yes.
So, another thing I wanted to give you a chance to tell everybody about is your advertising services that you've been offering recently. If I'm not mistaken, it's on your YouTube, Instagram, and in your LinkedIn newsletter. So, what's that all about? What kind of services do you offer there?
Absolutely, Bradley. Absolutely. So, my advertising services are very, very simple and actually goes back to my YouTube and newsletter. So, I wanted to make a platform that would be inclusive. And that was, of course, my YouTube channel. And I realized, a lot of people are promoting me on their site, on their platforms. I want to do the same thing. I wanted to advertise for people. So I do Instagram posts where if they give me a script and like a headshot, and I will do a little blurb about them, which I do through Canva,
Hmm.
and that's been good. I also make YouTube videos as well. If people want me to do like a YouTube video for like an upcoming release, I do that. Or if they want me to do something in my newsletter, they will tell me, "Hey, I'm doing this. Here's the headshot of me." And my newsletter has been absolutely incredible. A lot of people really, really enjoyed. So if there is anyone looking to, you know, gain more audience, gain more followers, or get your name out there, they can message me through Instagram or comment on my website or even message me on LinkedIn as well. And I will be more than happy to work with that person to give them a voice and give them a platform to showcase themselves.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, we'll make sure to include some information about that in the show notes as well because I think that's amazing that you're doing that for your fellow creatives. It's great stuff. So for my next question here, we've alluded to this a few times, but I'd like to talk a bit about your journey thus far with audio mazes because that's of course how you and I met.
Yes.
So again, don't have to dive too deep, but I would just love to know, kind of straight from the source, how you discovered audio mazes and what your experience has been like thus far.
So, my experience with audio mazes is that I was actually invited.
Mm.
So, let me set the scene. So, when I want to say probably about maybe 2023, 2024, I wanted to do something really special. And I came across this incredible person on Instagram, Belvoir Studios.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I met Sophia Dujardin. And it was an amazing, amazing interview. And that was the one that really inspired me to reach out to narrators as well, because that was another um, avenue, another uh, community that I had not considered at the time. It was only just authors. And when I interviewed Sophia, we still kept in touch. She helped me with the release of Michael, doing that amazing trailer,
Mm.
which is on my Instagram and YouTube.
Nice.
And it was, I want to say, around 2024, possibly 2024, is when I got reached out by Sophia to be a part of this. Now, at that time, I was in a funk. Business was not doing well for my job, and I need something to do. I want to be doing something different,
Mm.
taking chances.
Mm-hmm.
And she invited me to this project. She did not tell us what it was. And that's where, initially group was small. It was me, Kaylee, Carl, Tristan, Sophia, Colton, and I know there's one person that I'm missing. Our web wizard. I know that's not his name, but for those who know the Audio Maze community, they're gonna know who that is who I'm referring to. Which apologies, man. I'm so sorry I blanked on your name, but yeah, it
I
was
believe it's
just
Matt that you're thinking of.
yes,
Yeah.
Matt. Thank
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
It was Matt. It was just us. That
Yeah.
was the community.
Mm.
And once realizing what it was, and a lot of the trial and error of audio mazes initially, from audiobooks to now audio dramas, finding our footing, really getting our name out there. It's been insane. And for those who may not know, a lot of the authors, or some of the authors that are part of the Audio Mazes family, a lot of them are actually from not only my inner circle, but also Bradley's as well. A lot of people that we've met personally, we've kind of nudged and pushed gently to becoming members of the Audio Mazes family.
Yep.
And of course, if you've actually listened to some of the works, Bradley actually worked with a really good friend of mine, Jaden, on
Mm-hmm.
a story, which was amazing. And just seeing, how far our community has grown is just insane that we are still in our infancy
Yeah.
and yet we've accomplished so much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's amazing. I love hearing the full story from you. It's such an amazing. I had a similar kind of experience in terms of finding audio mazes. I'm sure I've told you this before, but in my case, it was Wild K Nebula who messaged me on Instagram and told me about a orientation call that Audio Mazes was hosting, and that is of
Mhm.
course how I met you. And yeah, the rest is history. I mean, it's I'm sure you would agree. It's one of the most fulfilling, if not the most fulfilling, like creative kind of teams that I've been a part of. It's truly special the work that's going on there.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I won't spoil this too much, but the story for, I won't say mine in particular.
Mm-hmm.
One of my first projects with Audio Mazes was actually one that is currently working on now, but that was during its infancy years. And I initially wrote two stories. They're of the same series. But again, at that time, we were still trying to figure out, what kind of stories, how do we want to really set ourselves apart? So we went through a lot of changes. So some of these old stories were put on the back burner until we had found our voice. And I'm so excited to be back working on this story in particular, which hopefully will be getting into production very, very soon. I don't want to spoil it for your
Sure.
listeners,
Yeah.
Bradley, but again, if you enjoy a lot of Roman-esque and a lot of epic scenes and fights, then they are going to enjoy this project.
Excellent, excellent. And that actually dovetails perfectly into my next question here, which is, of course, I wanted to talk to you about your projects this year in 2026. So, of course, you mentioned the upcoming work there with Audio Mazes. Any other books that we can be looking forward to from you?
Yes, so I am working on my fifth book, which is called The Wolves of Nobunaga, Book
Mm,
One of the Failed Quest trilogy, which is
mm,
set in 16th century Japan, or I should say 15th century Japan. And ultimately, I am so very, very excited to dive into this story because this story also has, you know, origins to my high school years. And that went through a huge rewrite, which I'm so excited. I'm also working on my sixth book concurrently, which is my first World War II story called Heroes of the 26th Battle for Bataan, which will be the beginning of another series called The Heroes of World War II. And I also have a potential anthology coming out of short stories from my high school years to now. And beyond projects, I'm also going to be making a lot of in person events this year, which I am super excited. One of which is, of course, at the Los Angeles Times Festival of Books in April on Saturday, the 18th. I'll
mm.
be there in person selling my books. I'll also be at Anacon, which will be at the Anaheim Public Library in Orange, California in May. And if things go according to plan, I will also be at the Orange County's Book Festival, as well as the Indie Author Book Festival, also at the Anaheim Public Library. So this year, I've made it a habit to go to a lot of in person events to promote not just myself as an author, but also as the wandering scribe as well. In addition to completing book six, and book five is already like finished. I just now got to get it ready for beta readers and then send it to my editor, which I am so excited to promote this story because it really truly feels like walking back into medieval times in Japan.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That sounds amazing. I love the title. I love the setting. Oh, incredible. Incredible. All right, Gabriel. Well, my last question for you here is something that I ask every guest on the show because I love the wide variety of answers. So my question is, given all of the experience you've had as an author and as a creative, what is one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's just starting out on their creative journey, or maybe coming back to writing for the first time in a while?
Oh, that is a very good question, Bradley. And I've gotten a lot of answers like this from my own show when I asked this same question to them.
Yep.
And this question, the answer to this has been not been easy for me to also accept for a long time as well. But I think it's probably the best advice, or one of the best advices I can give as a fellow author.
Mm,
And that is there is no guarantee in this industry that you're going to be a success.
mm-hmm.
Being an indie author or being an author in general is not a money making success.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of networking, it's a lot of grinding. And when we work on a story, we have this belief that the story that we have written is going to be the start of our legacy. And while that may be true for some people, it is not the case for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
There are going to be some highs and some lows.
Yeah.
And it's really important to accept that because it's on no reflection of one's character as an author.
Mm,
And I'll give an example. When I wrote The Gathering, I thought that that was going to be the book that a lot of people were going to know me for. It is not. I'm actually going to ask you, Bradley,
mm-hmm.
of the four books, which do you think is probably the one that I am probably most known for?
The one that I've heard mentioned most in my time just around the community and around the internet, if you will, is the Decimus Wolf of Rome. That's the one that's come up the most.
Yes, Decimus is a good contender, but it's actually Michael. A
Interesting.
lot of people know me for Michael because at the time, a lot of people knew me as the historical fiction writer.
Mm,
I had not written something that was truly fantasy. And when I wrote that book, everyone was blown away
mm,
because it was something that was familiar, but yet my own. And I'm okay with that. I'm
yeah.
okay with people knowing me for Michael because down the road, I am going to be writing a book that's probably going to surpass Michael or even surpass that. And someday down the road, we are going to reach that success. And that's when we can tell people, this is my journey. Ultimately, tying all this in together into one singular piece of advice, Bradley, is this: don't go into this industry expecting to make a lot of money.
Mm,
Understand why you want to be an author. Do you want to help advance the written word, or do you want to be a financial success? There's no right or wrong answer to this, but make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. If you want to be a financial success, go for it. Do the research. Find out if you want to be a traditional author, hybrid author, indie author. Balance your finances. Make connections with people who share the same vision as you. And if you like those people, hold on to them. Build your team. I've been very fortunate to make my team for my journey as an author. Lori Ball, shout out to her. She's an author of The Four Lands of Erevan. She's also my editor and artist.
mm.
Get Covers and Designs, an amazing company. I cannot say enough great things about them. So, again, a shout out to them. And also, all of the readers that I have had for all of my books who have been beta readers and ARC readers: Will Solomon, Lori Ball, Taya Nakamura, TK, Mayor Saleh, and many, many more. M Fire. So many incredible people that I've had the opportunity to meet have been a part of my team. Jesse Dean, another great author as well. Anthony Cowell, and I can go on and on, Bradley.
Hmm.
But ultimately, tying back into your question, know why you're going into the industry, do the research, make connections, build upon those connections, and really stick true to your guns as an author. And ultimately, never ever compare a book success rate to your self worth as an author.
Mm,
Because if you do that, that will kill you.
yeah.
I've seen a lot of authors and heard a lot of stories about authors who have done that, and that has killed their passion for writing. So never ever compare the book's success financially or anything like that to your self worth as an author. Do not do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a phenomenal answer, Gabriel. Thank you. That is a really, really good answer. Something else I wanted to call out there too that I think is really interesting is that, obviously when you asked me about which book I thought you would be best known for, of course I said Decimus because I've heard the name a lot and I've obviously always thought of you as kind of a historical, author. So it's interesting that Michael was the one that that tends to come up because that's obviously, like you said, more fantasy. And I think that's a really good point in addition to what you just said, because I think as authors, we shouldn't limit ourselves to just one kind of lane. We should allow ourselves to
Mhm.
write the stories that we are passionate about because you never know. Like I joined Substack thinking I'm going to be a horror author and everybody's going to know me for my horror. And yes, people enjoy my horror, but as time has gone on, my fantasy sci-fi connected universe has become way more popular. I never expected that. I didn't consider myself a fantasy author, but here we are, right? And so, yeah, it's like don't box yourself in and like you said, don't tie your self-worth to that success there because there are going to be ups and downs. Really good stuff.
Yes. And one final thing I will add before we close out, Bradley,
Hmm.
is for the aspiring writers who are just getting into this industry, understand the genre that you're writing in. Again, as Bradley said, never box yourself into one genre, one style of writing. definitely explore,
Mm.
but also do the research of the genre. Because
Mm.
a lot of people, a lot of readers of said genres have expectations of how a story is supposed to go. It
Right.
is this teetering balance that we all have to deal with as authors on a daily basis.
Mm.
We want to showcase our individuality, but we also have to be respectful to the genre that we're writing in. We don't want to write something that's very uh familiar to the point where people can say it's copying someone else. We also don't want to write something that's too new that's going to throw people off. So do the research,
Mm.
read books, especially books in that genre, see how they approach certain characters, themes, and style of writing. And at the end of the day, showcase you,
Mm.
show your voice. Because when we pick up books from our fellow authors, we don't want to read, the next George R. Martin or next J.K. Rowling or next anybody. And this is not to sound disrespectful to any of those authors. What I mean by that is that puts us again in that comparison box. We're not trying to be like those authors. We can never be like those authors. We want to be us.
Right.
So when someone opens that book, really, really drive home your voice as an author.
Mm. Phenomenal advice. Yes, yes, yes. I could not agree more. All right, Gabriel. Well, that brings us to the end of the interview here, but this has been just incredible. Thank you again for coming on to the show here. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely, Bradley. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show. I greatly appreciate it. And to all of my listeners who are listening to this right now when it gets launched, if you are looking for a platform to showcase your voice as an author, editor, narrator, or even an artist, Bradley has my official Wandering Scribe approval. He is an amazing person, amazing interviewer. He is just all around an amazing guy, and I cannot say enough great things about him. So, for all of my followers on Wandering Scribe YouTube channel, and for those following me on Instagram at Arbor283, go check out Bradley's work. Give it some likes, give it some support, and really help build his channel because he is an incredible person.
Thank you, Gabriel. I really appreciate that. And right back at you. All of that, right back at you. Anybody listening to Saved His Draft, go check out what Gabriel's got going on. It is incredible. Like I said, you inspire me every day. So I appreciate you saying that.
You're welcome, Bradley. And again, thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show. I greatly appreciate it, and I cannot wait to see what you have in store for us for the rest of the year.
Thank you. Thank you again to Gabriel for that amazing interview. Now let's talk about next week on Substack. So, this weekend, as I mentioned, I'll be posting our official mid-month challenge update. We'll look at the leaderboards for each bracket based on total author score. This is your first look at where everyone stands in terms of the overall challenge. I'll show the top 10 authors in each bracket, including which of their entries scored the highest individually, so you can see their top stories as well. This, of course, would not be possible without my dear friend Leron Haywood, so please show them and their work some love because they have been working tirelessly alongside me every single day this month to keep the challenge and the directories and the scoring running smoothly. Also coming this week, I have a special midweek episode of the podcast planned. Yes, you heard that right. Saved as Draft will have not one, but 2 episodes in the coming week. As a result, I won't have a guest interview next week, but here's what's happening instead. On Wednesday, I'm going to post a Devine special where I sit down with Fintan Marybrook to go through all the entries from the Day 5 Prompts Devine Challenge. Not only that, but we'll also reveal the first, second, and third place winners of that mini challenge. First place will get their story narrated by Fintan himself, making it a certified Devine tale alongside all of my other work in that universe. Second, we'll be allowed to choose a character from their story to appear in an upcoming Devine tale or Order the Pawn chapter. And finally, for third place, that story will become a part of Devine's official history to be referenced in future stories where it's relevant. So yes, stay tuned for a special Devine podcast episode on Wednesday, February 18th, and then stay tuned again for a normal episode on the 20th, where we look at the Week 3 Flash Fiction February top stories. And that's all I've got for you this week, though. We're so close to surpassing the total number of entries from my last challenge, So I just want to thank you all again for the amazing participation and enthusiasm for these prompts and for the challenge as a whole. I'm honestly so grateful and humbled and honored to be surrounded by such talented people. So thank you for the support as always, and thank you for listening, my friends. This is Bradley Ramsey, signing off. Hey, Fenton, have you seen Lord Devereaux? Ah, yes, he's actually sleeping. Food coma. Well, story coma, I suppose. Man, he's been eating good, huh? So many stories this month. Yes, meanwhile, I am losing sleep. Why? I cannot decide on a winner for this Divine Challenge. They're too good. Yeah, you and me both, my friend. I'm sure we'll figure it out. We always do.